Hi all, and welcome to my channel, Fred Makes Things. Today we're doing a bit of a slightly different video for you. We're staying in the realm of sewing because it is Wednesday and Wednesdays are sewing style videos. So I had initially planned on showing you how I made some chair back covers for our office chairs because my foster cat Susie has been destroying both mine and my husband's chairs. But when I put that video together, or when I was getting ready to put that video together and making the covers, there wasn't really a lot of content there, information there. So instead I pivoted at 1 a.m. Monday morning or Tuesday morning. It's Tuesday evening when I'm filming this for a Wednesday video. It's really tight. I normally don't do it like this. But anyway, 1 o'clock in the morning, I pivoted and decided to do something slightly different. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm not sure what I'm titling this video, but basically what I'm going to be talking about are different ways of creating quilting squares, like quilt blocks for quilts. And this kind of inspired me because like next Wednesday's video is our Sewers Club review video, and that is a quilted, or not a quilted, but a quilt style cushion cover with a whole bunch of pieces. Like it's a heavily pieced project. I'm halfway through cutting that right now, and then when I'm done filming and editing this, I'm going to start sewing it because I imagine it's going to take me a couple of days to sew it. But in last week's review video, I said, or in last week's unboxing video, I said, this looks complicated, and I wonder how they're going to be doing like the flying geese and stuff like that, one of the styles in there. And I was curious because then I looked at the fact that I have to cut 32 squares of one fabric. I'm on a whole bunch of squares of other fabrics, and I'm like, oh, they're going to make me piece each individual piece together separately. And I'm very new to piecework, to quilt designs in general. So that really had me worried. And all week I've been thinking about whether or not I could cheat the system and maybe try to avoid having to cut so many squares, which led me to last night's 1 a.m. decision. And that was to take some of the charm pieces that I have floating around from previous projects and see what I could do with them, see if I can make easier quilt blocks. And yeah, so what I did was I came up with I used three different techniques that I've come across on Instagram and stuff on various videos to see kind of like how I could produce quilt blocks. The other thing too is that these will be used in a future project that I have been planning out as well. So these aren't going to go to waste. They're just kind of like me more discussing the process of doing something rather than figuring it all out behind the scenes and then not talking about it. So I have, like, this is what I started with, like squares like this from a charm pack, right? I'm running really low on these. I only have like 4 or 5 of these left now, but I have these two to show you what they looked like originally. And then I have 3 different styles here in front of you for how they turned out. We have like the easiest to like a middling one to the most complicated one. So we're going to talk about the easiest one first, then the more middling one, and then the most complicated one. So yeah, I'm going to set these two to the side. And we'll talk about this one. So what I did is, or what I've been wondering mostly, is whether or not I can make flying geese easier. And if you don't know what flying geese are, well, you will in a second, because this has kind of like flying geese on them. So what I did, and what I'm doing for these demonstration purposes, is I'm taking 3 different steps to show you how I did it using the same fabric, except I don't have enough of this fabric, so there's one different. So what I did first is right sides together. I sewed a square around all edge sides, right? So it's a full square around all sides, and then I drew a cross from side to side. I don't know if you can see it on camera. It's started to fade, but a cross from right side to side, and then I cut that open. So here's one like it, right? It's crossed. I cut it open, flattened it out like this, right? So you see it's a large square now, double the size. And then what I did is I traced another line going down the center of this one, as you can see, cut that. And what that resulted in are 2 triangles, right? 2 rectangles like this, that I then sewed together in a, what they call like a flying geese formation. Now, the downside with this is that you cut off the tip of one of your edges, like both of your tips should be visible after being sewn. So you miss out on the tip, and they don't make perfect V's anymore. On the back you can see, right, like I'm cutting off this whole like little corner of my V, but it still looks really cool. And I think that if you had enough pieces joined together, you wouldn't be able to notice it. But for the purposes of next week's project, I don't like this tip being cut off. So unfortunately, this method of making the flying geese didn't work out for me. But it still makes like a really cool looking pattern, and it will work out fairly well in my next project. So this was my first attempt. This is what I did first. And then I said, okay, this isn't quite working out. Let's do my next attempt, right? Or the next technique. And that's the same idea, but cutting things a little bit differently. And so then we ended up with these. Okay, so we'll talk about those second. I had to seam rip everything once because it wasn't working out the way I wanted it to, and I have a lot of like leftover thread, which is annoying. I used black just because that's what was in my sewing machine, and because I was experimenting, I didn't really see the point in changing it. So same technique, same style of square, all around the outside, drawing a cross or an X through it. I forgot what I was doing last night, and instead of leaving one of these uncut, I cut all of them. But it's the same technique, right? Right sides together and across. Now, instead of cutting only the top section open, like I did on this one, right? Like I pinched this and cut only the top, leaving the bottom intact. I cut straight through here. So that left me with 4 squares like this, right? That all joined together into one giant, right? Into one square. But when they're open, they look like squares like this. And I left this untrimmed so you can see what they look like. I pressed them down, and now I have 4 even sized squares. And then you can lay them out in kind of any pattern that you want, right? So for these purposes, I did 2. I did a flying geese pattern and then a pinwheel pattern. How they work, like a pinwheel is like this. Right, you can square them more. You can see some of these aren't as square, It's because it was really late when I was doing this. And this is what it ended up with. Here's my flying geese and here's my pinwheel. If you can see, I kind of got my edges mixed up, and these two top pieces probably should have been sewn together. And these two bottom pieces probably should have been sewn together to match. But whatever, you can square them out. And because this isn't being put into like a specific quilt or anything, squaring these off would be fine. So on here, the flying geese come out better. They're not lined up like they're supposed to be, but they can come out together. And then you have like a nice point. So this would be a good way of making flying geese that way. Like what's cool about this method is that you don't have a join here. It's all one solid piece. Here you have a join, but it still looks pretty cool. And here you have a pinwheel, right? So you can see it, the colors kind of going back and forth. These were really easy to put together as well. On the next one, on this one, I might do striping or something like this. Like I think that would look kind of cool, but I haven't decided yet. Yeah, and then this is going to probably be more flying geese. But again, I haven't decided how I'm going to finish this one yet. But so same technique, right? Sew the outside corners, and then it just depends on which way you cut them, whether or not you end up with one giant piece like this or 4 little pieces like this. And then the final thing I was messing around with that I've seen a lot of people doing is to get yourself multiple squares out of one square of fabric. And what I should have done is not use such a small piece of fabric for this one, because I've made myself a lot of work. So how you do this is that you draw your X first, right? And then you sew 1/4 of an inch on either side of your cross, your X or whatever, joining your diagonal corners. You sew, right, 1 stitch on each side, and then you cut this apart. And what that creates, after you cut everything apart, actually, sorry, then you cut them like in quarters, right, from your centers, which is what, I don't know if you can see, but there's a line here and a line here to create 4 squares, and then you cut them through here. Wonder. So you cut it here. Cut it here. Straight. Here. Straight. And here, right? You want these all straight and in exact halves, right? So all of these should join in the same spot, but for demonstration purposes, all right? So where there's the pink lines, that's where you cut evenly, of course, right? But then what happens is you end up with a whole bunch of little squares like this, which I've flattened out for you. You end up with 8 little squares that all match, and then you can lay these out in any kind of pattern that you want. Right, any pattern that you want, and then you end up with something like this when it's all being sewn together. So for this one, what I did was a pinwheel in the middle, and then I'm not sure what I was doing on the outside, making some sort of like flying geese or something pattern. I have no idea. I was messing around. Somehow I managed to burn part of my fabric, but again, you can square this off and it would look really pretty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this row to this row here, make a larger square, and then probably this one as well to like the sides or something. I'm not sure yet, but again, my plans for these don't require to be too specific. But yeah, so doing it this way, right, cutting all of these creates quite a bit of choice. So I wish I had done, like, used a larger square so that these came out larger. The important thing with any of these is that when you're cutting them, to make sure you're cutting them evenly. Like you can see, this square here is a lot smaller than the rest of them. This one here is also a bit smaller than the rest of them as well. So, and in this you have a few that are smaller too, so you just have to pay attention to size. But yeah, that is what I came up with tonight. I wanted to kind of walk you through my process, like some of the things I've been working on. Basically, and this answered my question too, of like, am I going to follow the instructions of Sewers Club for next week's sewing? Like, am I going to follow the instructions for next week's project? And the answer is, yeah, I am. I'm already, like I said, halfway through cutting next week's project. And so because I'm so far along, I'm just going to keep going. I kind of knew I would, and then I'll come back next week and let you know whether or not doing one of these techniques or doing the technique that they suggest is better. These, I will say, are really fast. Like, this was the fastest because it was the quickest, but like I said, it doesn't give you those nice clean points. This one was second fastest. And you do get nice clean points. There's a third way of doing this too that I haven't tried experimenting with, but basically how that is that you take a rectangle or a square of fabric and you take other squares that are slightly larger. You sew them on your edges here. Like, imagine that these are all solid squares, but you actually, yeah, you sew like squares that are slightly larger than your other squares. So maybe this one is better. Like, these are too large, but like you sew, no, these might be it, right? Like squares that are slightly larger onto your edges. And then when you pop them open, you have points, right? With an overlap and a point. Kind of like so. So you see how there's an overlap here, right? So that when you're sewing, that 1/4 of an inch, right, doesn't affect the point, and then you have nice clean points. But I haven't tried that one yet, as you can see. So yeah, these are the things I attempted last night. I don't know if this is any better than showing you a project that didn't take me very long or have very many steps, but there you go, a look inside my process. So yeah, there's other types of quilt or of blocking that I'm going to try as well. Again, for the same project that you'll probably see in 2 weeks. If you're curious about how I do that, let me know in the comments, and I will do another video talking about that process as well. That would go up in December. And if you have any other suggestions for different blocking types, let me know. Like creators, artists I should check out, tutorials I should check out, any of that stuff, let me know. I'm really curious about it. I hate piecework, so anything that could make my life easier would be great and wonderful. Also, if you saw the letters popping up in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, I am running a contest, a giveaway, because I hit 200 subscribers. If you want to see the rules for that or know what's going on, check out Monday's video titled, I don't know, something like Dollarama Diamond Painting Review and 200 subscriber giveaway, something like that. Check that out. The rules are in the description box, and also it's the first bit of the video. The timestamps or chapters or whatever will tell you where to go for that, if you're curious about it. And yeah, with all of that being said, I'm going to say my usual bits. Subscribe if you want to. I've decided to try to hit 250 subscribers, or I would like to try to hit 250 subscribers by the end of the month, or by the end of the year. I think that would be pretty cool. Let me know if this kind of video helped, hindered, made you question life in general. I don't know. Let me know how you think about these videos, and if you want more process videos rather than just like finished product videos. That'd be kind of cool to hear, or to see if you're interested in them. Like the video if you've made it to the end. And with all of that being said, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I will talk with you again soon. Bye!